We are back, joined now by the head of the Tea Party caucus in the House of Representatives, Republican Congresswoman from Minnesota, Michele Bachmann. Welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you, David.
Nice to have you. You heard the Chief of Staff, Bill Daley, say that he's optimistic that it's possible to avert a government shutdown. Are you as optimistic as he is?
Well, I'm hopeful. I don't think anyone wants to see the government shut down, but it is shocking, the revelations of all the money that's been spent. There was a Congressional Research Service report that just was issued in February, and we discovered that secretly, unbeknownst to members of Congress, over $105 billion was hidden in the Obamacare legislation to fund the implementation of Obamacare. This is something that wasn't known. This money was broken up, hidden in various parts of the bills, and we have worked very hard to discover $61 billion in cuts that we could put forward, get to the president. So in effect, David, we've taken one step forward and two steps back, because we've found now that $105 billion has already been implemented.
You heard the president this week offer an accommodation to the states to opt out of the individual mandate where necessary to tailor to their own states.
Well,
why isn't
David,
that the sort of the give that Republicans wanted?
David, that's not a give at all. In effect, all that is a pretext for implementing a single payer plan. If you recall the president's entire statement, he said the states can opt out as long as they stay within the requirements of all of Obamacare, unless they want to go with a single payer. Again, from the very beginning, it has been said that Obamacare is a crime against democracy. It has been a deception from the beginning. Remember, the president told us it was a mandate, not a tax. Now in the federal court, he's arguing it's a tax, not a mandate. We were also told that our premiums would go down $2,500, and instead they're spiking up by 20 and 40%.
Let me get in here, Congresswoman. Let me get in here. I want to stick with the narrow budget questions. Are you willing to vote to shut down the government over some of these add-ons to these spending bills, to defund funding for the health care legislation, for Planned Parenthood, for the EPA?
I think this deception that the president and Pelosi and Reid put forward with appropriating over $105 billion needs to be given back to the people. There was no debate. There was no discussion. $105 billion is a lot of money. You can't just slip that into a bill and not tell members of the House and not tell members of the Senate, and then when they go to vote for the bill, did it just slip Harry Reid's mind?
Congresswoman, my question is a very direct one. Will you vote to shut down the government over those riders?
I think that President Obama needs to give back that $105 billion that they already appropriated. They have tied the hands of Congress for the next 8 years, David. They already appropriated this money. Members of Congress didn't even know this money was in the bill because we couldn't read the bill before it was passed, because it wasn't given to us, but hours before we had to vote for it. That's why Speaker Pelosi famously said we have to pass the bill to know what's in it. Members of Congress weren't even given the courtesy of time to read the bill. This $105 billion has to be given back before we can start any other discussions.
Let me ask you about some Tea Party criticism of Speaker Boehner over how far the cuts have gone. The USA Today reported on this on Friday. I'll put it up. Tea Party leader blasts Boehner over cuts. The founder of one of the largest Tea Party groups said House Speaker Boehner looks like, quote, a fool because he has not cut enough from the budget. Judson Phillips, founder of the Tea Party Nation, Boehner's inability to negotiate, he said, larger cuts should prompt the Tea Party movement to run a candidate against him in 2012 in a GOP primary. The Tea Party movement sprang up in 2009 as a reaction to insane government spending, Phillips wrote on his blog on Wednesday. In 2010, the American people spoke, demanding change. Everyone realizes that the level of spending cannot be sustained. John Boehner did not get that message. Has Boehner failed the Tea Party?
The main message that's going across the internet today among members of the Tea Party, they are outraged about this $105 billion that was deceptively put in the Obamacare bill.
Congresswoman, you made your point. I'm asking you a direct question here about whether you think, as head of the Tea Party caucus, whether Boehner has failed to live up to the Tea Party's expectations.
I think what we are trying to do as Republicans in the House is look for every place we possibly can to cut spending. We've identified $100 billion in cuts off of the president's proposed budget, $60 billion if you compare it to the 2010 budget. So we have done our part to look for cuts, but we can't end there. We have to also demand that we claw back the $105 billion that was deceptively already appropriated by President Obama.
The Speaker has said that it would be irresponsible not to raise the debt limit, as will be called for soon. Will you agree with him on that and do that?
I am not in favor of raising the debt ceiling. In the last 10 years, we have raised the debt ceiling 10 times. We are just giving the Congress a license to keep on spending. And one thing the American people are demanding, because they want to see jobs created, they want to see the economy get on a good footing. In order to do that, government has to take less so that the American people can keep more.
The issue of the Tea Party and backlash among voters against the Tea Party is an interesting area, because conservatives and certainly leaders and Tea Party folks have said, look, there was a mandate from the 2010 election, and that was to cut spending. And yet you have this from analysis from our Wall Street Journal NBC News poll written by the Wall Street Journal on Thursday. Among those most fearing spending cuts, they reported, were younger voters, independents, seniors, and suburban women, groups that include many swing voters in national elections who potentially could turn against the GOP. Quote, it may be hard to understand why someone would try to jump off a cliff to solve the debt crisis, pollster Mr. Bill McInturff said of his fellow Republicans, unless you understand that they are being chased by a tiger, and that tiger is the Tea Party. Is the Tea Party chasing the broader GOP off the cliff?
You know, I think that the political left has been very afraid of the Tea Party movement because it is not necessarily political. It's not Democrats or Republicans. It's made up of a very broad-based coalition. It's made up of people who want the country to work again. They believe that we're taxed enough already, the government shouldn't spend more money than what it's taking in, and that each of the three branches of government should act within the jurisdictional limitations of the Constitution. That's a broad-based group of people. They just want our country to work again, and I think that that coalition is hanging together more strongly now than ever.
You've talked about foreign policy and been critical of this president and his handling of the situation in the Middle East. I want to play something that you said back in January while in Des Moines about the future of this country and ask you about it. I'll play it first.
The question, quite frankly, is this: will America endure? And I don't say this melodramatically, and I don't say this to scare you or to say it lightly, because tonight I think the answer is in grave doubt.
Can you say specifically what you mean about it being in grave doubt?
Well, I believe the context of the remarks was regarding the economy. With the amount of spending and deficits that we are accumulating, that does put America's national security interests at risk, because when we have foreign nations holding a tremendous amount of our debt, $1 trillion nearly in the case of China, that can have national security implications. We do not serve our American interests well when we put ourselves in the hands of creditors.
What about the handling by this president of events in the Middle East? Is it your view that it's in America's vital security interest to remove Muammar Gaddafi from power in Libya?
I think that it's been troubling the way that the president has responded. For instance, in Libya during the unrest, we had at least 600 Americans who were there. The Chinese were in the process of removing 12,000 Chinese, while Americans were waiting for an American response to be removed from Libya. I think recently in Germany, we saw 2 military soldiers who were killed by alleged terrorists this week, and I think that the president's response at minimum was lacking. We need to send very strong signals. I'm concerned about the signals that the president has sent. They seem to be signals
Congresswoman,
of weakness,
my question
strong signals
is it in
East.
America's vital interest to remove Muammar Gaddafi from power?
Well, that question, I think, is one that, as Defense Secretary Gates has said, we need to be very careful about putting an army on the ground in the Middle East. We are extended now in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I think for us to consider further penetration at this time, we need to listen to General Petraeus and what he has to say.
Let me ask you about 2012. There's talk that you're considering a run for the presidency, and I wonder what you make of how people react to you. A lot of people think that you are an extremist, somebody who, you know, as you've done in the past, called the administration a gangster government, is far more interested in fueling anger than becoming something of a consensus politician who can attract widespread support. How do you react to all that?
I haven't made a decision either way about plans for 2012. What my concern is that our country move forward and that we regain a sound financial footing. I don't believe that Barack Obama has done a good job as President of the United States. I think that's bared out statistically on everything from anemic job creation to the out-of-control spending and deficits. The economy is simply not improving. Just consider, the day before the president took office, gasoline was $1.83 a gallon. There are places today in the United States where it is over $4 a gallon. It didn't help that the president had the Interior Secretary cancel 77 oil leases as soon as the president came into power. We can do so much better, and that's what I'm talking about with people in the next few months. We need to think very strongly. A second administration of Jimmy Carter wouldn't have done this country any favors. We need to make sure we don't have a second Barack Obama administration.
You've referred to the Obama administration as a gangster government. You've said that this president has anti-American views. Do you believe that still?
I believe that the actions of this government have been emblematic of ones that have not been based on true American values. Just consider Obamacare. Over 900 waivers have been given out to unions and protected special interests.
Is it appropriate to refer to the government
as
a gangster government and to question whether this president loves America?
Well, I said that I do believe that actions that have been taken by this White House, I don't take back my statement on gangster government. I think that there have been actions that have been taken by this government that I think are corrupt,
and you think the president has anti-American views?
Well, I've already answered that question before. I said I had very serious concerns about the president's views, and I think the president's actions in the last 2 years speak for themselves.
When will you decide about a run for the presidency?
I think there's a normal course of events when a decision like that will be made, and if I choose to go down that road, I'll make the decision.
Congresswoman Bachmann, we will leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.